This video is designed to explain to you the strategies behind a new instructional strategy called the flipped classroom. Many of you might not realize it, but the traditional classroom has a lot of drawbacks that make it difficult for many students to learn. If we look on the right-hand side of this graphic, the traditional classroom involves the teacher standing up in front of the room giving instructions, usually a lecture. While that's going on, students are taking notes. Students then usually follow some kind of guided instruction. So if you're lucky, you get some activities or something to work on in class. You typically give what we in the education field call assessments, basically tests and quizzes to see what you learned. And then, of course, students have lots and lots of homework to do, usually from their textbook at home. In the flipped classroom, what we're doing is we're flipping instruction. Basically, the instruction that used to happen in class, this part up here where the teacher is talking or lecturing and the students are taking notes, this is now happening at home. Via videos, it says podcasts, books, and websites. For this class, it will all be videos. There'll be videos like this, whiteboard app videos that I've made that'll be uploaded to YouTube. So that means what's going on in class now. If the teacher's not doing this, if you're not standing up there in front of the room droning on, what is it that's happening in class? Well, it's all based around activities. And in science class, this opens up a lot of wonderful opportunities for us. But what we're going to be doing are activities in class that build on the knowledge that students are gaining from the videos they're watching at home. It's also a valuable time for students to receive support that's needed. If you think back to the traditional classroom, the teacher's instructing and then eventually students do some kind of activity, some kind of guided instruction. That means if the teacher's good and they're only lecturing for about half the period, that leaves them about 20 minutes to individually help students. With the flipped classroom, since it's all about activities and one-on-one help during the actual class period, during the school day, there's a lot more opportunities for students to get the individual help that they need. We're going to take a minute and look at some problems with the traditional classroom. So again, this is the kind of classroom format that students have been exposed to for most of their lives. The big downfall to this entire strategy is that there's one pace for all students. Even though teachers hate to admit it, most of us deal with this reality by just teaching to the middle. This hurts students at both ends of the spectrum. So your more gifted students struggle because class is too slow, whereas students that are struggling find class to be too fast. We're going to pick on math here for a minute, just because it's oftentimes an easy target. If you think about math class, typically, unless you are that student who's right in the middle, math class can sometimes be a terrible experience because if you're good at math, odds are you're bored most of the time. Teachers will do an example on the board. Many of you will get it the first time, yet they'll follow that up with 5 or 6 other teacher-led examples. So if you're at the gifted end of the spectrum, math class can be a boring experience. If you're on the other end of the spectrum and you're struggling, you didn't understand the first example. So the teacher doing maybe 4 or 5 more doesn't always help. So the downside of the traditional classroom is this one pace for everybody. The only way to get away from that problem is to remove this guy from the front of the room. The teacher is the one that dictates the pace. So if you remove the teacher from the front of the room and they're no longer lecturing to everyone at the same time, that's a way to individually pace class. That's what the flipped classroom provides because you're learning through watching the videos like this one. You're not learning from me standing up in front of the classroom all the time. Another downside to the traditional classroom is it's hard to get caught up. Say you're out sick, you come back, the class has moved on, right? Because this guy's got to stand up there every day. He can't stop class because you were absent. Whereas if you're getting your lecture material from the videos, you can pick up wherever you left off. What's even better, you can take me home with you. You can still watch these videos from home unless you're, really terribly sick and basically just sleeping. Another downside to the traditional classroom is that it can be very boring. Again, if you're that gifted student who understood the first example, the next 4 are going to be painful. If they do 10, it gets even worse. So with the flipped classroom, you can move on at your own pace. And then the last thing, this is a big downfall to the traditional classroom. There's no one to help you if you get stuck doing your homework. You're at home working on these math problems or working on your biology problems all by yourself, whereas in the flipped classroom, the activities you would do for homework are now completed in class. So if you're stuck on something or if you run into a problem, I'm there to assist you, whereas if you're at home by yourself, odds are there's nobody there that can give you any assistance. So just looking at the flipped classroom for a minute, we'll take a look at some of the things that solve the problems we were just looking at with the traditional classroom. As I said to you before, it's individually paced because all the videos are online. So you can kind of move forward at your own pace, whether you're out sick or you miss school for sports or something like that. You get that individual help in class we're talking about. Videos are always available online. So I might not always be there to help you in class, but the videos are always there for you online as references. One of the biggest advantages that I see to this is that videos can be slowed down and paused. So if you're taking notes as you're watching them, which you should be, instead of missing instruction while you're writing things down, you can pause the video, write your notes, and then play it again. So if you think about how many times you've been writing things in class, and when you're writing, you're not listening to what the teacher's saying, so the videos are perfect for that. You can stop it. This is another huge advantage. You get more student interaction in class. So instead of, say, lecturing for half the period and then working on some activities for half the period, now the full class period is going to be either activities or individual help for students. The other one, this is more science specific, but in the flipped classroom, we can do more labs and science specific activities. Unfortunately, our biology class doesn't have a lab period, so the flipped classroom allows me to utilize more of that in-class time to do labs than I ever could with the traditional classroom. So the last thing we're going to look at are some practical little sound bites or quotes that people might have said or thought about the traditional classroom that are fixed by the flipped classroom. So we've got this first one: "This class goes too slowly, I'm so bored." So again, going back to that traditional classroom model, if you are really gifted, odds are class isn't going fast enough for you, and you are bored more often than you aren't. In the flipped classroom, that's not an issue. If you understand something, you can move on, you can watch the next video, you can go to the next step of the unit without worrying about everyone else slowing you down. The flip side is this one here: "I can't keep up, this teacher's too fast, they cover too much in one day." That's fine too. If you're falling into this boat, you're sort of on the other end of the spectrum, you can slow down the videos and you can watch them multiple times. You can get things at your own pace. This one kind of ties in with the first one. I understood this the first time. Why can't we just move on? Class is now self-pacing. This goes back to the ability of being able to pause and rewind the videos. How often do you either drift off in class for a minute or you're writing down a note and you miss something the teacher's saying? With the videos, you can very easily go back and replay what you missed. This one is a common gripe from a lot of students. I hate doing homework questions. You hate doing things at home because if you get stuck, there's really nothing to do other than maybe get some help from your textbook. But if you get stuck on the activities in class, I'm there to kind of nudge you in the right direction, give you some guidance. These next two, honestly, are some of the biggest things that I like about the flipped classroom. If you're out sick in the traditional classroom, what happens while you're gone? Class keeps on progressing. So if you're out for 4 days, you come back, class has now moved on 4 days ahead, odds are you're going to be lost for the rest of that chapter, unless you really take some initiative and maybe come in after school to get caught up with that teacher. But, worst case, or even best case scenario, you're at least going to be lost for a couple days. So with the flipped classroom, you can still watch the videos from home, you can get caught up even if you're out of school. It also applies to people who leave early for sports. So if you're constantly missing your period 10 class, if your teacher runs the flipped classroom, you can stay caught up even if you're getting out early and chronically missing that same course over and over and over again. And the last one here kind of ties in with the homework questions on the other side. I'm of course there to help you with activities in class and to help you with things that would typically be homework assignments. So hopefully this gives you a good idea of why I chose to use the flipped classroom. I hope you agree with the many advantages that are presented with the flipped classroom, and I hope that you think that this will be a fun way for us to spend the rest of the school year. So thank you for watching.